Welcome to Joy in Our Town. I'm your host, Vanessa Rose, and we are so happy that you decided to tune in and join us for another great edition today. Today, we are so happy to be joined by Chaplain Shane Rabindranath. I knew I was going to get that wrong, Chaplain Shane. I'm so sorry. Sometimes we have these long names, and it doesn't matter how many times I practice it, it doesn't happen. But Chaplain Shane, such a pleasure to have you here today.
It's an honor to be here today, Vanessa. Thank
you. And you are the Director of Ministry Development at the Phoenix Dream Center, a wonderful organization that's doing great work here in the Valley. But before we get started talking about our issues, if you wouldn't mind sharing who you are, what you do, about yourself.
Well, I work at the Phoenix Dream Center, and most of my life has been geared towards helping young teens, helping young men and women get off the streets. Ever since a young age, I worked with the City of Phoenix Recreation Department. We worked with Frances Emma Barwood. She was a councilwoman at the time, building teen centers. And just over the years, I have found it to be one of my missions of helping people. And now it's people of all ages, men and women of all ages. And at the Phoenix Dream Center, we're able to help take men and women either off the streets, out of prison, out of jail, out of just situations where they were codependent on substances, codependent on things in their life, and basically help them just transform themselves and helping them holistically heal and move that direction in their life where they can get restoration, where they can get their families back, they get their jobs back, they have more of an opportunity to have a full functioning life.
That is wonderful. And I know that the Phoenix Dream Center, how many people do you guys help on average, like a month? I know that you're daily. I know that you have a big outreach down there.
Well, we have we have about 305 people that live there on the campus.
Wow.
We do about 123 outreaches a week. So not including the 305 people living on campus, we feed 14,000 meals a week.
Wow.
7,400 of those meals are in-house. The other 6,600 are out of house. And so we're touching 40,000 people easily a month.
That is wonderful. That is, and unfortunately, that's just touching the surface, right, on the need here in the city and in our state.
Exactly.
But that's so great what you guys are doing. So thank you so much for taking your time from there to be here and to share with our viewing audience. Maybe reach a few more people, make an impact in a few more people's lives. Today we are speaking about drugs and alcohol, and our first topic is abuse of drugs and alcohol. You know, starting out with something so simple, whenever we hear drugs and alcohol, whenever we hear substance abuse, what is abuse? Where does it cross that line, and what does it look like out there whenever you're dealing and helping these people?
Well, I mean, abuse in general is just when they go above and beyond taking the needed dosage. When it comes to alcohol, when you start relying on alcohol to be your coping mechanism. When you start using drugs to basically cope for whatever situations are going in your life. And abuse is when it totally takes over your body. From a chemical standpoint, the dopamine levels. But from a codependency standpoint, it's when emotionally you can't handle situations in life. You're going through things and you have to rely on these substances, such as alcohol, such as drugs, to basically counteract whatever's going on with your life. And then abuse is just where they need it more and more. And it starts controlling them, and then they start doing things. They get involved in, I mean, over 50% of violent crimes are contributed to alcohol and drug use.
Wow. So it's mind altering. It's changing these people, and they might think it's helping them in their own way or numbing their issue, but it's creating more issues in their lives.
Correct.
And so, what do you see are some of the reasons that that people are abusing alcohol and drugs? What is the cause of it?
Well, one of the biggest causes is, I mean, many people drink to cope with the daily stresses and tensions of life. I mean, life isn't easy. Working a job, supporting a family, the economy, whatever the reasoning is. A lot of people drink, and they start drinking because of social gatherings. They'll come, they'll get introduced to it, and then they'll like that way of life. Like you said, it's mind altering. So they want that mindset all the time. So then they start doing it, and they do it to where they want to live in that mindset all the time. I mean, some people use it to compensate for feelings of guilt, shyness, low self-esteem. I mean, there's a lot of people who are going through things in their life that they cannot cope with. They either do not have a good support system, they don't have a good family background, they don't have people there for them, or they're just not able to handle what's going on, and it's such a traumatic experience that they push themselves over to depend on the drugs and the alcohol.
How long did you say you've been working around this?
With the Phoenix Dream Center, 3 years.
Yeah, but how long have you been working with Phoenix?
Since I was 16 years old, I started in this direction in life, so about 22 years.
Okay, and the reason I was asking that is because have you noticed that with the way that kind of social acceptance has changed, with drinking being more acceptable and more of a social thing, and they show the numbers going up with drinking. Have you found that that's changed a little bit since you've been working with people, that it's made it more acceptable and people are starting, maybe not because they come from a bad home or because they come from a bad area or something bad happened in their life, but because it started more as this a socially acceptable recreational thing?
Yeah, well, what it is, I mean, a lot of people, in today's teenage population, over 90% have used alcohol.
Wow.
Because not only is it a social gathering, but like you said, it's acceptable. If their parents are doing it, then they feel like they should do it. I mean, over 50% have used marijuana, 17% admit to trying cocaine, and 12.5% have used some form of hallucinogen.
Wow.
And so, I mean, it's definitely social gathering as part, but this day and age, over the years, it's just gotten worse and worse, because the more that they see that their friends are doing it or that their parents are doing it, the more they feel like it's something that just has to be, you know? It's just part of everyday life.
Yeah, and so dealing with these people, are you, what are some of the signs of abuse? What are some of the ways to be able to tell that there's abuse going on in someone's life?
Well, definitely. I mean, definitely if a person's abusing, they ostracize themselves from their families. Mood swings. I mean, we're talking about the basic characteristics. They start stealing. They start just getting into depressed states. They start hanging out with the wrong people. They start relying more and more on hanging out with the people who are going to be using the drugs and alcohol. And basically after time, just a whole change in their demeanor, their personality, and they just start doing, you know, get involved in crimes, get involved in whatever they have to do at times to get the finances to support the habit. Because once the drug abuse takes over and the mind is altered, then they need that substance to survive, they feel. And so what a lot of them do is they'll do whatever they can to pay for or get the money any way they can.
You hear the term functioning alcoholic.
Correct.
And that's something that is probably very common, because there are people, what constitutes that, and how then would you be able to help with that?
Functioning alcoholic, that's an awesome use of the term, because I've known a lot of me. My father was a functioning alcoholic. And the functioning alcoholic is a person who goes through their whole life, basically they drink, but they know how to go to work, they know how much to drink before they go to work, but when they come back, they have to have a drink. They have to drink to sleep, they have to drink to get up, but they know how to go to work. They know what their priorities are to function in life. And 34 out of every 35 people have some sort of alcohol problem are functioning alcoholics. And that's a huge number. That's only one of those people actually go past that line and become an alcoholic where they actually need help. Okay. And I mean, for functioning alcoholics, the way to help them is when they get to that point of their life where the emotional stress gets to them, where they lose their job, there's really nothing you can do until they get to that point and where they actually reach out for help. Okay.
So that's something that's very common, though. That's something that people are seeing in their families, that are seeing. And you said that you grew up with it.
Correct.
Is that something that, for children, did that affect you? Does that affect families, even if they're functioning, even if they're doing their work? Because even though they're taking care of their responsibilities, whenever you're consistently altered in your mind, you're not really always there. You're functioning and you're doing what you have to do, but doesn't it change the way that they interact with people?
It definitely changed me as a young adolescent, because growing up, I thought that's how my dad was. But then when I got older and I realized it was alcohol talking, I adapted to it a bit better. Okay. But I mean, I thought that's what it was about. I thought that was just the normality. But for me, it gave me an anger towards alcoholism, because I actually had to study it when I found out, because I thought that was just a part of life. You grow up, you get shouted at all the time, you know, you go through these phases. But when I found out that it was more of the alcohol talking than it was my father, then I was able to understand the issue, study the issue, and forgive. And you were able to probably find out that it wasn't, it was an illness or an issue that he was dealing with. Correct. It wasn't him, it was the substance. Yes, exactly. So is that maybe something that kind of drove you to make a difference and to work with people in this very field? Yeah, it definitely, I mean, my heart is helping people to get into the right frame of mind, whether it be through a faith base, through AA, through codependency meetings, finding a path where they can get off of whatever they're on, whatever in their life is helping to become that codependent partner in their life, and letting them to start think for themselves. Because when I saw people, I mean, one of the biggest things is that over 50% of suicides are contributed to alcohol or drugs. And I've had a lot of close people to me die via suicide, via accidents at parties because of alcohol and drugs. So I definitely had a heart for this, and I went out and I realized it wasn't the person, it was the substance. The person was beautiful. It was the substance that was altering that mind and controlling them. So once we got that out of the way, the beautiful person was able to shine.
Wow. And they probably just become they just become better people. They
Yes.
become more responsive, they become more accountable. That's one thing that I know that on our next subject, we're going to speak about prevention and intervention. But one thing, I've known several alcoholics in my life. I think that probably almost everyone has known or been touched by that at some point in life, whether it be a functioning alcoholic or a full-blown alcoholic that needs to go find help. One thing that's probably the most difficult is they're very, out of a protection device for themselves, are typically very deceitful. How do you deal with that? Because it's just the fear of people finding out and drinking. How can you address that as a person?
Well, a lot of times when they're going through those mentality of being deceitful, of trying to hide it, a lot of times it's just, unfortunately, it's till they hit rock bottom. There's a lot of things you can't do, because the more they become deceitful, the more they ostracize themselves away from it, the more that they push you away from them. They push the people that love them, that care about them, that want to help. They push everybody away. And unfortunately, most people have to hit, and I hate to use that term, rock bottom, but they have to come to a point in their life, to a travesty in their life, to where they realize they need help. They can't do it alone. They need direction, because they know they can't control what's going on with them anymore.
Yes. No, and that's very good. And that's kind of leading on into our next subject. Right. So for all of you watching at home, thank you. If you have any questions, please go to phoenixdreamcenter.org. I know that they have great resources on there, and they're a great organization if you're struggling with anything in your life. It's something I think that most important to let people know is that you're not alone, and a lot of people deal with this, and it's not something to be ashamed of. And it's something that there are lots of resources in this state and this community that can help you. So please don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this short message.
Dad, have you ever smoked marijuana?
Why do you ask?
It's getting legalized everywhere now, so it's okay to do now, right?
It's not legal for kids at all. Watch for the sign.
I see it. Most of my friends say that because it's becoming legal, teenagers might be more likely to try it.
Marijuana, like all drugs, is harmful to teens still developing brains and can cause heart and respiratory problems as well. And using marijuana often leads to use of other drugs.
Like heroin?
That's right. But remember, today's marijuana is much more potent than it was back then.
Talk now and talk often about substance use. It's all about your kid's future.
Hello and welcome back to Joy in Our Town. I'm your host, Vanessa Rose. So happy you decided to stay with us. If you're just happen to be joining us, we are so happy to be joined by Chaplain Shane from Phoenix Dream Center, and he is the Director of Ministry Development. Thank you so much for staying with us, Chaplain Shane.
Thank you, Vanessa, for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. You've worked a long time with people in this very field, helping a lot of people. And so we're speaking about drugs and alcohol. And our second topic is prevention and intervention. This is something that is probably one of the trickiest points, because a lot of times if people come to ask for help, it's because they, like you said, have hit rock bottom. But for trying to help people to prevent this very illness, it's what are ways that people can prevent abuse of alcohol and of drugs?
I mean, the biggest thing with prevention, honestly, is awareness. Is awareness in the schools, awareness in the family, awareness in the churches, awareness in the communities. We're talking about tell your kids from the beginning. If you are an alcoholic and you know you're going through something, seek help. Don't let, because your children mimic what they see their parents do. If you yourself, go get help. Seek therapy, go to AA meetings, go to NA meetings, go to a faith-based organization, find a good church to plug into. Because what your children see is what they're going to copy, and at the same time, if they're going to school, get them into those awareness programs. Get them involved with community activism programs. Get them involved with just going to the parks, going to the recreation centers, but make sure they're aware. Make sure that they're on a well-based education, that they're involved with sports, with clubs, they're involved with healthy social activities.
Okay. So that's something, working with people, is it pretty common for it to be a generational thing, alcoholism and drug abuse? Or at least in your experience, have you seen people that it's one generation to the next that deal with this?
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of our people that I've seen over the years, most of it is generational and geographical.
Okay.
Generational, where if my dad did it and my granddad did it, then I'm going to do it. It's just part of, our geographical, it's the neighborhood I grew up in. I grew up in a impoverished neighborhood, low income housing. That's what we do. We don't have a chance in life. I mean, they come up with this low self-esteem from the beginning because, one, they give up. If they think this is just part of who they are, part of the nature. So if my dad's doing it, it's got to be cool, it's sociably acceptable. And so, yeah, definitely generation to generation. It can be broken, but it definitely has a huge impact.
Is it important for parents, let's say there's two parents in the house and one of them is struggling with alcoholism or drug abuse, can you be honest with kids? Can you tell them, hey, you know what, mom or dad is going through this issue, I'm working on it, or they're working on it, and this has nothing to do with you, and this isn't right, but it's being worked on. Can you talk to kids like that? Can you tell them if someone is dealing with it in the home?
Yeah, that's a very tough topic.
Yeah.
Some children would take it better than others, but I know, they talk about 50% of all marriages end up in divorce, and so with all these problems going on, my personal standpoint is I saw it growing up, and if it was pointed out to me, and it just depends on how the family is. I mean, if the family's going to say, look, at your father or your mother has a problem and we're going to seek help to get it, I think that would be okay. But the fact that if the mother or father is not going to seek help, then definitely it's not something you really want to bring up.
Okay.
Because if they're not willing to seek help, even as adults, that's going to affect the child. But if you're going to go seek help, then the child's going to be aware that this is something bad. That would be fine. But if you're not going to tell, hey, I'm doing drugs, because then if you're not willing to change yourself, then it becomes socially acceptable to the child, and then that's how that generational, curse or generational thing begins.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And whenever you're going into an intervention, what are a few steps for intervention if you have a loved one that you're concerned about is abusing drugs or alcohol?
Well, one of the bigger things with intervention is being upfront with them, as they say, being real. Sitting the person down, getting the people that love the person the most, not the people that the person likes the most, but the people that love the person the most. I'm talking about family members. I'm talking about wives, husbands, children, best friends, people from work, people who are not using, people from not that social gathering, but the people who are doing or who are more of a positive impact on that person, sitting that person down and telling them. You see these shows all the time about intervention. It works. And then finding resources, being with that person, going with them, being an accountability partner, being going to AA meetings, finding them a person that's going to help sponsor them, going to church with them, helping them find and plug into an awesome church, getting into small groups, and slowly getting them into a atmosphere where it's positive, an atmosphere where it's either be faith-based, it be a community program, but just somewhere where that stuff's not around, Taking them, a big thing about intervention is removing them from that environment.
Okay.
And once you remove them, because they say it takes 66 times to make a habit. And you keep moving a person out of that environment, and keep moving, and they start seeing how they don't need it anymore. That's what most treatment centers are about, and that there is actually more to life than just using.
Wow. And that's something that it kind of sounds like what you're talking about is peer pressure, regardless of their age, and environments really truly make a difference. I remember one thing I've always heard is, it's easier to pull someone down off the bench than to pull them up on the bench. And I think it's that whole dynamic of what you surround yourself with. What do they say? If you want to know someone's character, look at their closest friends.
Exactly.
And that's something, it's that surrounding environment that really does make a difference then.
Yes.
So that's something to keep in mind with probably even your own personal life for people that are watching. If you have friends that are questionable character, I think that's something we've probably all struggled with at points in our life, especially going through school and growing up and changing friends. You realize, hold on just a second, whenever I'm around this group of people, I do something different than whenever I'm around this group of people. So, but as far as interventions go, what do you do if the person is not accepting, and if they're not at a point in their life, and if they say, I don't have a problem, I appreciate you saying this, but I don't think I have a problem. What is something, and I know that there's many different approaches to this, and I understand that, but what is something that people do then at that point? Do you just wait? Do you just love the person?
Unfortunately, you hit it on the head. I mean, the top two is you wait and you love the person. All you can do is love. The madder you get at the person, the more that they back into a corner and they use because they can't handle that pressure or that stress. And so a lot of times you just have to wait till they get to that point to where they're willing to make a change. You could put a person into a rehab center, into a therapy, into a transitional living center 50 times. If they're not ready all 50 times and they don't want it for themselves, they're not going to make it all 50 times. When they're ready to make it for themselves, if they realize that there's a family waiting for them, there's an opportunity waiting for them, and they're shown that there's more to life than what they were living, that they have a future, that there is a chance of restoration, then they're going to want it. I mean, when people come into our programs, the ones that want it, from the moment they get in that door, they might have a stumble here and there, but their second or third time, they're going to make it. A lot make it their first time. But some have come in 10 or 11 times, and they've left 10, 11 times because they came in because they had nowhere to go. They had nowhere to live. They wanted a hot meal. So all you can really do is wait till they're ready for it, till they want the change in their life. But you have to be there to love them, because if you're not there to love them, then they're going to know that no one's there for them. They won't know a direction out unless you're up right beside them. You say, I love you, I'm here for you. When you're ready, I'm going to help you. And when they're ready, be there for them.
Wow, and love them through the failures and through the mess
Love
ups.
them,
And,
yes, yes.
and that's probably the hardest thing. I know that there's even organizations that deal with that very thing with the family members.
Right.
Because there's just as much need on that side, because whenever you are dealing with someone who deals with abuse, whether it be alcohol or drugs, there's relapses, there's frustration, there's failures, and that's just
Right.
part of the system. So what is advice for the family members going through maybe helping these people? What should they do? Because everyone's only human, right?
Right.
And so we even grow impatient, we even grow tired as people, even if we're trying to love someone, even if we want to be there for someone. What would be advice for them?
My best advice is make yourself aware. All right, either research it on the internet, go to support classes, go to AA meetings, go to NA meetings, go to churches, find counselors who are knowledgeable in this. But if anything, become knowledgeable, become wise, read about it, study it, understand what the symptoms are, understands how to communicate with them, and how not to communicate with them. If you figure those things out and you become more aware yourself, then you could love on a person more because you understand what's going on. The worst part of this is not having knowledge. The lack of knowledge in dealing with people in this situation just makes it worse and worse and worse. If you make yourself aware and knowledgeable, then you can definitely open your arms in love and understand what's going on, and we then walk them through the situation, and they can definitely recover faster.
When should people intervene and not enable? Enable is a big word, and I know that that's a big thing for.
It's a very touchy subject with a lot of people, because when people love people, they think that they're helping, like if a person. But all that means is you've got to know when to intervene and not enable. You don't. If a person has been going in and out of programs, and you keep helping them, giving them money, keep helping them a place to stay, unfortunately, you're enabling them. You've got to give people that point in their life and let them know, look, hey, you've got to do this. I'll be there for you in love, but you need to go through this program. You need to do something. You need to take a step out on faith, and you need to do something. Intervening just means you know a person has like intervention. You know when a person can't do it anymore. They've hit that point. They're going crazy, where you can actually step in and say and find out what the issue is. Enabling is you by giving them things to help them get worse. Intervening is getting there and say, hey, look, you have a problem. We need to fix it. What can we do? What do you need from us?
And that's enabling is probably the most difficult, because whenever you take away, especially if it's a child or a family member, they call it tough love.
Yeah.
And being able to say, you know what, I'm here and I love you, but I'm not going to keep supplying for you.
Correct.
I'm not going to keep giving you a place to come back.
Correct.
But that's very difficult, and I'm sure that you've seen that, because for families, especially if you have a child, you don't. It's like, well, then where are they going to go? But at some point, they need somewhere to go, right?
Right.
And so they're going to look for someone or for something that's going to be there for them.
Right.
So what would be then your final advice for families that are dealing with this, and that may be at a point of intervention, at a point of where they're saying, you know what, we have a family member and they need help? What would be your advice for them?
So my biggest advice is find a place. If it be a church, if it be a place like the Phoenix Dream Center, if it be AA meetings, be there for the person, help them walk through it. Take them to tours of these facilities, take them in to talk to people. Be there with them, never leave their side, you know, never give them too much, but let them know that you love them. And by loving them, that means take them to these places personally and being with her and going through the situation with that person. Because they'll only get better when they have someone there who's doing this with them, living this with them, realize that. And you start becoming that dependency. You know, they start going to church, they start depending on more of a holistic side. And once they can get off of those drugs and alcohol as their primary care provider, per se, and they start realizing that people care, that people love, then they're willing to change. That's when lives get restored. That's when people get better. And that's when dreams become a reality.
Well, I know they say that, I know that, I don't know the exact numbers, but whenever you go to a faith-based organization, the success rate is much higher because especially if it's something where it's a chemical imbalance within themselves,
Correct.
an addiction, they're going to go from one thing to another. So it's very helpful for them to find and plug into a faith community. Is that true?
In what I've been dealing with faith-based organizations most of my life. So what I've seen is we've had a really low recidivism rate with faith-based organizations because we do take a more holistic approach with it. But I do know that a lot of secular, a lot of AA and NA and codependency, if it works for a lot of people also, though. And a lot of it does come down to, though, if the person wants it. If the person wants it bad enough, they can make it. But yeah, but faith-based really does work because they do learn how to love again and how to love others again and how to love themselves. And that's the biggest thing, loving yourself.
Yeah, 'cause it's mind, body, spirit. It's our whole bodies. Well,
Correct.
Thank you so much for being here, Chaplain
Thank you
Shane.
for having
Thank you
me.
for your time. Thank you so much at home for watching. If you have any questions, go to the website that's been shown at the bottom of the screen. And we're here to love on you and to bring some joy into your town every week. And also just to encourage you, if you or a family member is struggling, find help. You're not alone. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you right here next week.
This program has been sponsored by the Trinity Broadcasting Network and is made possible by your telethon dollars. Your continual support can keep Joy in Our Town coming to your home every week. Write to Joy in Our Town, Post Office Box A, Santa Ana, California, 92711.